So this is a video called "Some of Asmongold's Thoughts on BFA and Blizzard's Direction for the World of Warcraft."
Hey, it's Soul with another video, and I got nothing. I have no notes. I don't really have anything to refer to, but just
Relatable.
a couple minutes ago, I had finished watching a video from Asmongold that talked about, quote, I believe this is quote, the state of Battle for Azeroth. As you know, at least from his perspective. When I was listening to the whole thing, it was kind of like greatest hits of MMO Champion and the WoW forums and certain areas of Twitter that go into pretty much every negative slant of a critique that you can get to with regards to this expansion and the direction that World of Warcraft has been going in over the past several expansions. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, at first I thought it was like, okay, this is like just kind of a greatest hits thing. And then it went to like this borderline satire because of his suggestion that, hey, you know, we should have like a big suggestion, you know, a big forum just for suggestions and good ideas. And it's something that's going to be very heavily curated by Blizzard in such a way that only the cool ideas will get through. And from those, hopefully, those cool ideas will be translated into something that is actionable, that Blizzard will act on, and we'll be able to see in game at some point in time, whenever it's possible. And I think my head was just kind of twisting back and forth, like, oh my god, really? He wants this, blah blah blah. He thinks that. The tone of the video was so hyper.
Let me pause and just address that point right there. So Blizzard used to have a suggestion forum in the game that already existed. So for him to say it's satire, does that mean that Blizzard was doing it satirically too whenever they actually put it in the game and put it in the actual website? Ooh. So, I mean, like, what do you mean? How's that satire? I mean, the idea that making a forum and talking about it is like that satire or whatever, like, I really don't get that, honestly. I have no idea. It's not satire in any way. I was not being satirical whenever I said that, yes, I think Blizzard should curate and cultivate a way that community can give them feedback on issues. That was not satirical. That was a legitimate opinion.
Hyperbolic and negative and all that it's so easy for me to just be like, dude, I totally disagree with.
So the hyperbolic, how much do you guys want to bet that there's not ever going to be a qualification where he actually qualifies a point that I made as hyperbolic, but he's just going to say that I'm being hyperbolic without ever actually defining hyperbolic and how it actually fits into my video?
That seems to be a trend.
I would say the chances are pretty high, but we'll see what happens.
Every point. However, I don't. Everything that he says is true. The exception is the way the exception is in fact the tone and the way it comes off. And
so the video is good, you just don't like the way I said it.
What went on there that kind of bothered me was that there wasn't a lot of acknowledgement or any acknowledgement of how other players feel. It's his opinion, and it's coming from it's coming from him. That's cool.
Yeah.
The parts that threw me off where he was like, oh, well, I'm basing my opinion on what I see on other forums and Twitter and such. So that influences that opinion.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm here to do today is kind of carry on for a little bit, hopefully not for half an hour, but I wanted to carry on about my perspective on this, how I see this, and while I do identify these kinds of issues that he has as well, I see it differently, and I don't see it to be as bad as one would think. He claims he says and he claims that he.
So basically, he's saying that I'm being hyperbolic. He's saying that my tone is bad, and in my opinion, like, yeah, it was an emotional tone. It was a more elevated tone because I want the video to be engaging, right? If I talk with a monotone voice, I can do that about anything. But it's not engaging or interesting for people to listen to because it's boring. I think being interesting is better than being boring, even if you do throw some people off that want to have everything in a monotone.
Doesn't represent players. I don't think I do the same either, but I think that he does come from the perspective of the players that are part of the forums and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and whatnot, who offer these critiques. And I feel like I have no idea. I probably don't, but I feel like I represent those who just don't talk, those who just speak with their wallets.
So how can you say that I have a bad idea and it's bad for me to say that I speak for people whenever you're now saying that you speak for other people that don't talk? How can you speak for somebody that's not telling you what they think? At least I can have a quantitative way to say that there are people that agree with me by listening to the things that they're saying on the forums. But if you're saying that you're speaking for some sort of a silent majority, there's no way for you to know that or do that, because it's impossible for you to be able to quantify that in any sort of a way because of the nature of it being silent.
Who just hang out in game and kind of do their own thing and just go and do their day by day, and don't really look at the news, the forums. They don't watch these videos or any videos. One of the big arguments that's been being thrown around ever since Legion or so is the idea of, well, the design decisions that Blizzard is making is all about increasing playtime and getting people to stay subscribed for as long as possible. Increase those monthly active users, and that's right. That's all that matters. And in my opinion, it's a valid critique, but it refuses to acknowledge how things were before and how this is just a redressed version of what feels like almost the same thing. There is a big difference. But the way that I see that particular argument, to me, it doesn't hold any water at all. The idea of using these convoluted systems just for the sake of prolonging subscription time, or enticing players to log back in and do stuff, to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because I would think
it doesn't make sense. It makes dollars.
Myself, the immediate response that I have to seeing something like that is to suggest, well, if Blizzard really wanted to increase sub time and online time and whatnot, then they would do something much more subtle, like not bother with the idea of being able to switch specs and have your primary stats change with
Azerite gear.
They would have removed that. They would have said, oh, it's not fun somehow, so we're going to take that out. Or they would have
reforging,
lowered the drop rate on certain gear. They would have lowered the number of pieces of gear that dropped in a raid. It would have
They indirectly have done that by creating Titan Forging and Warforging.
40 people would go into a raid and only two or so pieces of gear would drop per boss kill. Kind of sucks. They would go back to...
So what they've done instead, like what he's saying is, yes, obviously people do get more gear nowadays, and getting more gear nowadays does not necessarily correlate to there being, like more rewards in a way. Whenever you create Titan Forge gear or whatever, basically, back in the day, whenever you got a piece of gear, that was like the best piece of gear that you could get. That was the best version of the piece of gear you could get. Now they've created infinitely, not really infinitely, but like, 100 different versions of a piece of gear that you can obtain. And because of that, you're never able to actually get the piece of gear that you're trying to obtain. So to make a 1-1 comparison between the amount of times that you can get like a best in slot piece of gear back in vanilla, or like Burning Crusade, or even Cataclysm, to now is incorrect because of the way the Titan Forging and Warforging system works. And the end game and the end goal is not necessarily to get the gear, it's to get the best version of the gear, which is never attainable now.
Having ridiculous Black Temple level attunements in order to just get into a raid.
The Jaina questline to get into Siege of Borealis. The War Campaign questline to get into King's Rest. Was it as hard as the Black Temple attunement? No, it wasn't, but there are still different things that are just like that.
The whole premise of prolonging subscription time is countered by an argument that is stated by other players. Maybe a different segment that says, well, all you have to do is do LFR and you're done with the game, and then you feel like you don't have anything to do when you ask, oh, where's the content, Blizz? So I'm not saying that any of these opinions are wrong, but that these opinions and that the players themselves, they have all sorts of different opinions, many of which contradict with each other. And from that, the whole
different
premise of creating a forum that's just designed to curate good ideas, that ain't gonna work. It's very idealist. I appreciate the sentiment and the passion behind wanting something like that. but that ain't gonna work, dude.
Good argument.
You'll easily have conflicting ideas that have very very strong and good points that come from all these different camps.
Well, that's the point where the developers would have to make a decision as to which direction to go in. But the idea is to have the conversation occur so the developers can get more insight into the way the community feels and have them be able to explain why they feel that way. And through the general, like, I guess, like Darwinism of ideas in like a forum, the more positive ideas will be outvoted more and the more negative ideas will be outvoted less.
Which will probably contradict with each other, and I don't think anything great is going to come out of it. I mean, it's a great thing for Blizzard to look at and be like, okay, they got some good ideas there. Okay, that's a good idea here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, whatever. Let's go with what we were doing, okay? There's also the conversation that went on, and this also happened in Asmongold's video too, about the premise of, oh, we're just playing in a Skinner box. We're just chasing rewards and carrots, and we're fed up, and some other analogy like that. You know, I'm pretty sure I'm just playing a video game. And that the whole premise of a video game is, I mean, this is another cynical way to look at this thing. It's, well, I'm just playing ones and zeros. I'm just looking at pixels and that sort of thing. So for me to try and understand a game system so much that I have to break it down into the psychological level, like, it's, oh, this is just a series of dopamine rushes and such. That, to me, that is an active effort to take the fun out of things and turn it into a calculation, which...
Analyzing the game and being analytical in the way that you look at how the game incentivizes different types of behaviors now makes the game unfun. I think that you can make an argument that for some people that's true, but at the same time, I don't think doing that by its own nature makes it unfun. If you're saying, like, because it's a video game, you should just play it and have fun and not care, like, why certain things go into the game, I would disagree with that pretty strongly.
Is a stance that I take with regards to things like simming and all that. To me, simming takes a little bit of the fun out of the game. Although that's a very debatable stance that I'm taking, because there are many folks that love to
there's a lot of people that do that
and be able to go take that path of being able to maximize or min-max their performance. Now, there is one aspect that I think Asmongold and I are more closely aligned with, and that's the idea of being able to work towards something. Setting a goal and targeting something that we can eventually work towards. I think he missed the point of. I think he missed the part about, hey, there's the weekly conquest gear award. You know, the weekly PvP award that you can work towards. You know exactly what it is. You can go for it. But at the same time, there is a random fact.
I did not miss the fact that there is a 355 item that after 2 or 3 hours of queuing, I can obtain. Yes, I did not miss that. I intentionally ignored it.
Factor whenever you complete higher end arenas or rated stuff in order to get decent gear. I've said this story a number of times. It's about the Red Sword of Courage. It's a sword that
drops from King Yimron on heroic
King
Utgard
Yimron
Pinnacle.
in Utgard Pinnacle back in the Wrath of the Lich King days. And I think I killed that dude maybe like 50 some odd times before I can get this this sword. I really wanted it, and so I got it, and I felt pretty proud of myself when I finally did, or at least I felt very relieved after like the 50 some odd run. These days, maybe because I'm getting old and kind of cynical myself, but I just forget the name of gear these days. It doesn't matter. It's like I look at the source, I want it, I see it, it looks really cool, but I wouldn't consider the story behind obtaining it to be very memorable. And the reason why is because there's so much feasible, reasonably good gear that's out there that it makes that final goal of getting that thing that you actually want.
I think that's true.
It doesn't make it feel nearly as fulfilling. This is a trade-off where the perspective on it is where Asmongold and I diverge.
I think that is true.
He sees it as a slot machine. I see it as just incremental rewards. That's it. Nothing special. Once upon a time in the Burning Crusade days, there were so few pieces or so few sources of gear that I would often go weeks, months without getting anything worthwhile. Not even like a side grade or just nothing incrementally good, because I already got the piece of hero badge gear or whatever.
You have to do the raids,
and nothing else would drop for me because I wasn't really capable of raiding beyond a certain level.
Yeah,
it's the difference where in the past you got nothing. Cool, you get something good. These days it's you get decent, okay, decent, downgrade, nah, decent. You know, you get a different kind of reward scheme going on. I wouldn't exactly call this a slot machine, because if I were to say, if you
well, then what is a slot machine? Like, if you wouldn't call that a slot machine, what would you call it? The point that he's making is actually completely valid. What he's saying is that now, because you obtain more and more gear, it's not feasible for every single piece of gear to be valuable in the same way that it used to be, because you would just complete your best in slot set in a matter of like days. That does make sense. But the solution to that is not to just keep doing it the same way. The reason why he remembered the pieces of gear that he got beforehand is whenever you got the Red Sword of Courage, he wasn't thinking about getting the Red Sword of Courage that was Warforged with the socket. He got the Red Sword of Courage, and that was good until you got into, I think it was Naxxramas or something. So that's why he remembered it, is because it was a definitive upgrade, and he had it for, it made an impact on his character in a way that gear doesn't now. And I think that's definitely true. That now they have more gear, and it does make things harder, and there is incremental growth in a lot more ways. Is incremental growth better than like kind of big jumps in power? I don't know. In my opinion, I think that it kind of is not as good, because it diminishes the feeling of upgrades, but I can see a counterpoint for that too.
If I were to say that current BFA and Legion as well, that their progression system is a slot machine, then I could easily use the same thing as before, except that you won nothing instead. The question that's being posed here for
you could use that analogy for anything, right? If there's ever a piece of gear where RNG is an influence, there is inherently a slot machine mechanic that's going on, right? You roll the dice, and it's not even really a slot machine, it's a random element going on, where you roll the dice, and you either roll or flip a coin, you flip, yeah, heads or tails, right? Yes or no, get it or don't get it or get got. The truth is that obviously, like now, you have to roll, instead of one coin, you have to flip 20 coins in a row in order to get the same thing that you used to be able to get with flipping one coin. Now, was flipping that one coin harder back in the day? Yes, it was, but it was also more rewarding and more fulfilling, because you knew that whenever you flipped the one coin, you didn't have to worry about having to flip it 5 more times in order to get the thing that you actually wanted.
For you folks at home and on the toilet who are experiencing this kind of system is simply, what do you prefer? Do you prefer a very heavily curated and rep gated or time gated system where Blizzard will eventually distribute like nice pieces of gear for you? Or would you prefer a system where you are showered with gear, and eventually among those things you'll get something good?
It's like
Maybe
Diablo
I'm
3.
losing my mind, but I see these two systems as pretty much the exact same thing. Only with this current system, there's a lot more colors to work with. So cool, it works with my transmog. And by the way, yes, people do care how they look like.
That's something we can agree on.
I don't mean this to be like this.
So let me replay that just a second.
Or would you prefer a system where you are showered with gear, and eventually among those things you'll get something good? Maybe I'm losing my mind, but I see these two systems as pretty much the exact same thing.
Right. They're not. Here's why they're not. Is because basically the Red Sword of Courage was about an 8% drop rate, 8 to 10% drop rate off of King Yimron in Heroic Utgard Pinnacle. It's level 80 Heroic Instance. The chances of you getting that sword is 8%. That's a baseline 8% drop rate. The chances of you receiving something that is equivalent to that sword now in Warcraft is a 0.8% chance or a 0.08% chance because of Titan Forging and War Forging. So in order for all of the stars to align for you to get the item, it's substantially less. So to compare the two things and say that they're the same is just completely untrue because of the degree of RNG. I don't think anybody is saying that every single boss should drop a piece of gear that's exactly the same every single time that you kill it, but I think the degree of RNG and the removal and the amount of times that you're removed from being able to obtain your goal is the main problem.
Only with this current system, there's a lot more colors to work with. So cool, it works with my transmog. And by the way, yes, people do care how they look like. I hope I kept this short. I don't mean this to be like this anti-Asmongold, you know, I disagree with you sort of thing, because he's saying a lot of the same things that I'm saying. It's just that the conclusions that we come to are very different. But where do you stand in all of this? For those of you who did watch that Asmongold video and talked and saw stuff about this suggestion forum, do you really believe that the most talkative of WoW should be dictating the game over those who don't talk, or even developers who are actually making the game have the lead?
No. See, he misrepresented my position. And so, no, of course not. So you have to make two assumptions there. Number one is that's the thing that I wanted. Number two is that the people that are more talkative, their interests are opposed to the people who don't talk. I think that oftentimes for every person that does say something, there's 20 or 50 or 100 people who say nothing but just agree. Right? And so like that only makes sense, like the way that he's like presenting it, if you're saying that those two groups have different interests.
Legion and BFA systems turn this game into a slot machine, or is this just a redressed version of what we've been experiencing this entire time? And lastly, Nomi sucks. Am I right? Right? That's all I got for today. So share your thoughts and stay breezy.
So what do you think? Yo, McConnell, what do you think?
Huh? About what?
The video.
I didn't watch it.
But you listened to it, right?
No.
Really?
What happened?
He said that I was wrong.
Well, I don't need to watch a video to know you're not wrong. The guy's an idiot.
Well, I mean, like, so he's basically... All right. So as I said before, was there a point where he made an example of me being hyperbolic? No. There was. Actually, I would say it was the opposite. I think that he was being hyperbolic at the end by taking my argument to, like, an illogical conclusion, which is not really what I was saying at all. So I don't know, man. It's the same thing, man. I made 0 points. Yeah. Do what?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I don't get it at all. 12 minutes of waste, no solutions, worthwhile ideas, dividing community for good boy Blizzard coins. Well, I think really, I think he was really trying to just like play the middle of the road, right? And he was like he was trying very hard to like not be, what's like really the word for it? Not be controversial. I think that was like his main focus. And he was saying basically, if I'm trying to evaluate the game on a psychological level, that I'm wrong because it's a game. I don't know. I think like everything about it's just wrong. I don't know. Provide an example, like 1 out of his 10 points. Well, yeah. Okay, so like to not be confrontational. Yeah, exactly. Chat just sounds like a white knight community with no opinions about the matter. Well, no, I mean like, so is it just like that? I mean, is that another? Am I being hyperbolic again? Like, what is it with people and like not being able to say what they think? Like, I don't get it.
I hate these middle of the road people. Like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I agree with. Take a stance, man. Take a stance. Have an opinion about something, man. You're pathetic. Stop being a cuck all the time.
Just tell people what you think, man. I think that they're just trying to like to hide their positions because they don't want to alienate anybody. They just want to play the middle of the road the whole time. It's boring to me. Like, I don't think it's not productive either. You were in 12 minutes of my life. That video was awful. I don't think it was awful. I mean, I thought the video was fine, right? I mean, like the points that he was making, I think they did make a very interesting distinction. Like, I'm not trying to like say the guy's an asshole. Or, oh.